Welcome to worship for the Unitarian Universalist community of Charlotte. I'm Jay Leach, one of the ministers of this congregation. Today I'm joined by my colleagues John Herrick, Director of Music, and Martha Knisley, our Adult Programming Coordinator. Oh, how deeply we feel your absence on this day and your presence on this day. We miss you, and we are very glad, if only in this way, to be with you again. Thank you for joining us for our live-streamed service. Not only is this the latest in a string of the strangest days of our lives, it is also the first Sunday in spring. So today we lean in a little closer to what we might learn were Earth to be our teacher. Now, you may not be able to see them from where you are, but today we have children and youth with us for the first part of our service. So kids, if we can't see each other and can't see all the others who are watching this, do you think there's any way that we might be able to hear each other? I think it's worth trying. So on the count of 3, I want you to yell as loud as you possibly can. Children, youth, and adults, yell as loud as you can, "Good morning." All right, you ready? 1, 2, 3. Good morning. I didn't hear you. Maybe we can try it one more time. And those of you who were too reserved or composed, or maybe you were too self-conscious to do this the first time, you can join us this time. Again, on the count of 3, as loud as possible, good morning. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Good morning!
Oh, wow. I definitely heard you that time. Your beautiful, beautiful voices from all over this region and beyond. Had we been able to meet together today, our children's choir was going to sing a great old song, one many of us know. Now that your voices are warmed up, John is going to play it. You'll see the words. And I hope whether you are alone or you are with others, that you'll sing along as if you can hear all of us. Welcome. If you haven't done so already, while you're singing, go to our main Facebook page, not the member page, but the public one. Just search for Unitarian Universalist Church of Charlotte and post a greeting under the post announcing welcome. I am so glad that you are here.
from a poem by Joy Harjo. Praise crazy, praise sad, praise the path on which we're led, praise the roads on earth and water, praise the eater and the eaten, praise beginnings, praise the end, praise the song and praise the singer, praise the rain, it brings more rain, praise the rain, it brings more rain. While we are living in a world of imbalance, may the light of our chalice bring us the embrace of belonging. Praise the rain.
Good morning again, especially to the children and youth who are joining us for the first part of this service. Now, some of you were with us last month when we were able to be together in this room, and you will remember that I brought in not only a cutting board and a tomato, but a really long knife. And we sliced a tomato right in the middle of the service to talk about scarcity and abundance and the way in which if we harvest the seeds from one single tomato, we could, over time, eventually feed everybody in the room. So I was trying to think what we could do to top that, what we could do to top bringing a really long knife in here. And what I had planned to do, if you were able to be with us today, was to create a tightrope and get you to walk across the tightrope. And unfortunately, you're not able to be here. But I thought about an exercise that we could kind of pretend like we were having the same experience of trying to walk across a tightrope. So if you are a child, if you're a youth, even if you're an adult and you want to participate in this activity, what I'll need you to do right now is stand up. Wherever you are, just stand up. And while you're standing, I know we've got a lot of folks who are watching, children, youth, and adults, but I think Charlie Katz is one of those people. I think Charlie's watching right now, and Charlie, it's your birthday. Happy birthday, Charlie Katz. And to your dad as well, to Rob, and to anyone else who's celebrating on this day. So everybody's standing, all the kids, anybody else who wants to participate, stand. Now, the first thing is I want you to decide which of your feet is stronger. What's your strong foot? And I want you to put your strong foot firmly down on the ground. Put it down as firmly as you can. Now, before we do the next part, parents, if you're there with your phone, I want you to get ready because you have a part of this. You're going to snap pictures and post those pictures onto our public Facebook page. So what I want you to do with your strong foot on the ground, I want you to take your other foot off the ground And unlike what I'm doing right here, well, now like what I'm doing right, I want you to lift it as high as you possibly can, and you can see what happens when I do that. So pick your foot up and lift it as high as you can, and stand on one foot as long as you can. And parents, I want you to snap the picture of your kids on one foot, hopefully before they tip, and maybe even post how long they were able to do that. Now, again, you got to have that other foot as high as you possibly can. Raise it up as high as you can. I'm a little creaky. This is about the best I can do. And see how long you can stand like that. As it turns out, it's kind of tricky to stand on one foot with the other one way up in the air for very long. And you start to wobble and then you fall back. I think that's how all of us feel right now. We feel a little wobbly. We've been thrown off balance. Wow, what is going on in these times is making life hard for everybody. We're having to stay away from one another. We're having to avoid the things we enjoy. Even school is starting to sound like a fun thing compared to another day having to stay home. One of the things when we're off balance, when you start to lose your balance, when you're standing there with your foot up and you start to lose your balance, if you just had somebody there who could catch you, somebody you could lean on. That's what we have to do now, because all of us are off balance. And what we have to do now is to lean on one another. Support one another, be patient with one another, be especially kind to one another, because we're all off balance. It's as if we're all trying to stand on one foot with the other just as high in the air as we can. And as it turns out, when you do that day after day after day, we all lose our balance every once in a while. So if you are in middle school, you are invited now to go and access a Zoom chat room where you all can check in and share how you're doing with one another. If you are in high school, there's another Zoom chat room for you. Both of these are facilitated by teachers, by advisors. If you're in elementary school or below, there is an activity sheet that Kathleen Carpenter has created just for you. Parents, if you don't have it already, you can access it through Currents, or there's actually a post on our Facebook pages on how to access that. That activity sheet will guide the younger ones of us as the rest of us continue with the service. Children, youth, we miss having you in this building. It is way too quiet today. We can't wait till you get back. But in the meantime, lean on one another as you talk together. Lean on those you love most. Thank you for being with us today.
A poem by Adrian Rich, excerpt from Transcendental Etude. No one ever told us we had to study our lives. Make of our lives a study, as if learning natural history or music, that we should begin with the simple exercises first and slowly go on trying the hard ones, practicing till strength and accuracy became one with the daring to leap into transcendence, take the chance of breaking down in the wild arpeggio or faulting the full sentence of the fugue. And in fact, we can't live like that. We take on everything at once before we've even begun to read or mark time. We're forced to begin in the midst of the hardest movement, the one already sounding as we are born. At most, we're allowed a few months of simply listening to the simple line of a woman's voice singing a child against her heart. Everything else is too soon, too sudden, the wrenching apart, that woman's heartbeat heard ever after from a distance, the loss of that ground note echoing whenever we are happy or in despair.
Robert Frost wrote a simple poem about the flowers in this season. It's set to music as a hymn. So in these days when we're not together, we're still going to be offering songs and lyrics, and whether or not you choose to sing along at this time, notice especially on this day the beauty of these words and the music that John will now play. I'm sure some of you have seen the video or one of the spoofs or the memes. At the end of February, Oprah Winfrey was in Los Angeles on her 2020 Vision Your Life in Focus tour. Pacing slowly across the stage in a cream pantsuit, microphone in hand, new age music playing, and shifting abstract shapes projecting on a screen behind her, she reflected, "Wellness to me means all things in balance." And she added, balance doesn't mean all things are equal or at peace at all times. At that instant, a most earnest moment in her reflection on balance, she turned slightly, lost her, I can't think of another way to say this, she lost her balance, stumbled, flailed a bit, tried to recover, but then went tumbling all the way down to the floor. If wellness means all things in balance, that did not go well at all. Fortunately, she was fine, other than a slightly twisted knee and a more severe case of embarrassment. Philosopher Alain de Botton admits, the human being has a terrific need for balance, and we're able to lose balance very easily. And don't all of us have a few embarrassing moments to prove that point? Perhaps that's why for generations we humans have admired acrobats, those brave, bold doyens of balance. Consider that most famous lineage of all, the Walendas. In late 18th century Bohemia, there was a family troupe of clowns, jugglers, acrobats, and aerialists bearing the name Walenda. By the end of the 19th century, new generations of Walendas had established their fame as flying trapeze artists. When he saw them perform in Cuba, John Ringling immediately invited the Walendas to join the greatest show on earth. They debuted in Madison Square Garden in 1928, performing their aerial feats without a net, since it had been misplaced in shipping. The astonished crowd responded with a 15-minute standing ovation. The fame of the Walendas grew as they expanded their repertoire until it included a 7-person, 3-level high-wire pyramid. They became a world-renowned act, performing with Ringling Brothers in their own shows and in increasingly spectacular solo walks by the great Karl Walenda. In March 1978, 73-year-old Karl Walenda walked out on a high wire 121 feet in the air between 2 hotel towers in San Juan, Puerto Rico. As he reached the halfway point, the ocean winds ominously picked up and Walenda struggled to maintain his balance. "Sit down, Poppy, sit down," one of his young family members called out. Determined to persevere, he stepped forward, teetered, leaned over to catch hold of the wire, the balance pole swinging wildly in his hands. Alas, the great wire walker fell helplessly to his death. Karl Walenda's tragic act serves as a reminder of what we each know today as obvious. For even the greatest among us, under certain circumstances, balance seems impossible. How then can we mere mortals expect to find our way through the high wire act of our lives? The Tao Te Ching calmly counsels, when you stand with your 2 feet on the ground, you will always keep your balance. But of what use is such a banal witticism? Perhaps if that were an option, if we could remain with our 2 feet firmly planted on the ground, we would indeed keep our balance. But whose life is like that? Even in times more normal than these. Don't all of us find the responsibilities, opportunities, and challenges of life not infrequently putting us on a precarious path, and sometimes placing us on something that feels more like a completely unrehearsed high wire act, one we are navigating without a net? Is it any wonder that in these days, when all of us have encountered strong gusts of uncertainty and completely unforeseen obstacles of confusion and concern, that we find it a challenge to concentrate, to keep our heads up and our legs moving forward? Don't we all feel off balance and at least a bit fearful that there's a crash up ahead? On one of, this just may have been the most surreal week of our lives, at the very time when things were careening completely out of control, something utterly predictable occurred. On Thursday of this week, the planet tilted and whirled its way to that precise point at which there were equal amounts of night in both hemispheres. This equal night, this equinox, this vernal equinox, marked the beginning of spring for the entire northern hemisphere. For that one portion of one day, there was balance. The two halves of the globe receiving equal amounts of the sun's rays. While we certainly welcome spring with its profusion of color in this beautiful city, the redbuds and the pear trees of flame and splendor, the dogwoods and azaleas now following, it may be worth noting something about nature. Thursday's equinox did offer balance. However, now already just 3 days hence, there's an imbalance of sunlight and darkness again. And it will remain so until Thursday, September 22nd, a day about which perhaps the only thing that we can say for sure at this point is there will again be equal night on that autumnal equinox. Save for those 2 auspicious days each year, the natural world where light and darkness is concerned is always imbalanced. Imbalance is, despite what we may have been led to think, imbalance is a far more natural state. Marcelo Gleiser, Brazilian physicist and astronomer, says as much. In A Tear at the Edge of Creation, Gleiser declares, it's not symmetry, but the presence of asymmetry that best represents some of the most basic aspects of nature. Symmetry may have its appeal, but it is inherently stale. Some kind of imbalance is behind every transformation. From the origin of matter to the origin of life, the emergence of structure depends, he writes, fundamentally on the existence of asymmetry. We've visited the shoreline and we've seen it, tides rising and falling, rising and falling. If we've been lucky on some nighttime stroll on the beach, we've seen it, the moon waxing and waning, waxing and waning. Those heady daffodils we celebrated in a recent service here, they stood in their sunny splendor but for a few days. But then, like an awkward celebrity on stage, wobbled, wavered, and toppled over, losing for another year their brief balance. If Earth is our teacher, we will learn that balance is neither normal nor natural. Imbalance is our natural state. It's what we can expect. There is in that regard another lesson offered by the earth this past week as a reminder. Life entails seasons. Seasons. If we step back from the immediacy of our days, we might see our lives as a succession of seasons. If that's the case, we won't expect every day to have it all. There may be a season of play, and then learning, and then doing, seasons of caregiving, and then being cared for, seasons more attentive to work or to parenting or to adventure, seasons more attuned to calm, seasons when a reduced amount of physical and mental energy makes for a quieter life. Hindu religionists present this perspective. They don't expect balance in the moment, balance in the day, balance in the month, or even balance in the year. They believe life has its stages. The first stage of life is that of the student, when the primary responsibility is to learn. The second, that of the householder, with its emphasis on family, vocation, and community, engagement, success, contribution to the larger good. Then comes the stage of retirement, the season to find life's deepest meaning, to discover who one really is and what life really means. And beyond this stage, at last one arrives at detachment, the effort to resolve life by becoming one with everyone and everything. Now, these may not be our stages, but this Hindu insight reminds us life's balance won't ever come in the moment. Life's balance won't ever be experienced each day or even every year. It may only be from the perspective of a lifetime that balance can at last be experienced. Now, it's one thing from a state of relative equilibrium to try to keep things in balance, to try to keep things in perspective. None of us, no one on the planet right now is in a state of relative equilibrium. None of us, no one on the planet right now has 2 feet firmly planted on the ground. If on this past long, hard week you have felt irritable, anxious, frustrated, angry, worried, wearied, if, as you now look back, you are aware that you weren't your better self, you weren't always patient with your kids, loving to your partner, caring to yourself, attentive to your responsibilities. If this is the case for you, I am here today to declare with absolute confidence that you are in very good company. Perhaps we do well to aspire to a life of balance. Perhaps it's a worthy ideal to imagine getting all of our roles and responsibilities in some cohesive, non-competitive order, and our physical, emotional, and spiritual lives in harmonious integrity. But in fact, it almost never happens completely. And you know what? It is not. It is not going to happen right now. You simply cannot expect your life to be in balance right now. We might begin then by letting up on ourselves. You weren't prepared for this. None of us were. If you battled frustration or exasperation, if you experienced profound loneliness or deep worry, that's completely understandable. Let up on yourself. Then we might also let up on those around us. Some of us have been thrust into close quarters in ways we never imagined. Everyone in your life, near and far, everyone in your life is having a hard time right now. Even the most fortunate ones of us are anxious, tired, wondering how long this will last and how much we can take. We're all off balance, let up on others, cut them a bit of slack. But there's at least one more available lesson from the earth on this day. The great Pablo Neruda wrote, "Perhaps the earth can teach us as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. The most irrepressible, indomitable force in life is beauty." Beauty. How utterly incongruous in ways for which we should be grateful that these agonizing days are so beautiful. How utterly amazing in ways for which we should be grateful that people are doing such beautiful things. People singing, making music, sharing music, people giving and caring and being remarkably generous and sensitive, people holding up the good, people calling attention to the remarkable, people highlighting beauty in so many forms. If earth is our teacher today, let the lesson be one that also is about beauty. Where can you find it? Where can you notice it? In what ways can you share it? To whom might you pass it along? Earth, teach us on this day. Teach us that imbalance is what we can expect, that balance is neither normal nor natural. Earth, teach us on this day, teach us patience. Patience with ourselves, patience with one another. Earth, teach us on this day. Teach us to see beauty, to appreciate beauty, to magnify beauty. Blessed be.
Good morning. Our epigraph for today's service suggests that focusing on balance in an ever-changing world is pointless, especially because imbalance is our natural state of being. That's a difficult concept for me. I've prided myself on my efforts to figure out how to find a healthy balance of family life, time with friends, how to take care of myself during the worst of times, how to find emotional balance. But what if I accept that I need to lean into this idea that imbalance is our natural state of being? I thought about how I'm affected by our changing seasons. Many of us dread the winter nights that seem so long, the imbalance that imposes more time alone in the dark. A few years ago, I had to rectify these feelings and embrace those quiet hours. As David White suggests in his poem, Sweet Darkness, sometimes it takes darkness and sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. I thought about a sculpture in my garden I call Touchdown Buddha. His laughing face tells me everything is going to be okay. Unfortunately, one of his hands got knocked off last year. I try to put it back on the right place, but inevitably, I'll find it on the ground again after a squirrel comes along to show who's boss in our vegetable garden. I considered ordering a new statue, but instead, I have come to lean into the asymmetry and imperfection of my friend. I thought about the imbalance of our current lives last Thursday on the Spring Equinox, as we are all looking for ways to not feel what we're feeling. I took some comfort in knowing that on that day, everyone across the world shared the same experience of equal parts, day and night. My husband, Tim, joined me for an evening walk before we started making dinner. We had to come to an understanding on those walks when I heard him a few steps behind me say, "That's okay, I'll just meet you at home." My approach to walks was a bit imbalanced. I suggested that he let me know when my pace wasn't fun for him too. That evening, as I turned the roasted vegetables, he called me outside to watch the bats flying about, to rest our eyes on Venus and Orion's belt. Just for those few minutes, we got to forget about the chaos of our lives to focus on something we could count on. I'd like to welcome you all once again to our service today, visitors and members alike. I'm imagining you sitting in your living rooms, your family rooms, your kitchens. Perhaps you'll watch this at a later time as you take a much-needed break from your new routine. Whenever and wherever you join us, please know that in these days, our small group ministry has never been more important. Your staff is looking into ways for you to stay connected and continue the learning. We've created email groups hoping to connect you with others who live relatively close to each other to enable you to join us in this work. We will share new ways to sign up for classes and events online in the near future. We hope to direct you to a Zoom link so that you can watch and listen to this month's Credo presenter, Alex Creech, next Sunday, March 29th at 10:30. You'll find that information on our member Facebook and Currents by Thursday. And for visitors, you can learn more about us on our website, or feel free to contact our membership coordinator, Kelly Green, at kelly@uuccharlotte.org.
I have never been prouder of our professional staff. We have come together this week, keeping an appropriate distance, of course, to reimagine what it means and what it can mean to be this community in these times. Martha and Kelly Green, our membership coordinator, have invested hours in creating the new small groups that Martha just described to you. Kathleen Carpenter, our Director of Religious Education for Children and Youth, is setting up ways for kids to check in together, beginning today when, right now, both our middle and high school kids are meeting virtually in video conferencing settings led by teachers and advisors. We will be offering much more in the coming days. Tomorrow evening, on Monday evening, Doug Swaim, our Director of Administration, and I will be offering an overview of our budgeting process. This will be through Zoom, a video conferencing platform that we will be using often. You can find information about how to access this session in the latest issue of Currents, which is posted on our website. On Thursday evening of this week, the work of our Racial Justice Core Group will continue in a virtual session. We'll be having team meetings and educational offerings by way of video conferencing. Watch for much more soon. Members of our professional staff have been making phone calls to members of this congregation this week, checking in, especially this week, on members already homebound. We're committed to making regular calls to others, expressing our support and our concern. Please, if you would like a conversation for any reason, reach out to us. We are here for you. Collectively, we open our hearts in love and our spirits in prayer for Lee and Gwen Movius, for Judy Reynolds, for Mimi Valum, and especially on this day, we hold deep in our hearts and in our prayers Shirley and Paul Wagner. As those of you who are regular attendees know, in the normal course of our services, those gathered here are invited to light a candle to express symbolically remembrance, celebration, joy, or concern. Today, I will light 3 candles, one for each member of this spiritual community, one for our larger community, especially for those who are serving us at this time: healthcare workers, sanitation workers, clerks, caregivers, delivery people, farm workers, those working in food processing facilities, scientists working to create a vaccine. And then I'll light a 3rd candle. It's one for our world, especially on this day. We share in love and in grief with the people of Italy, with the people of Spain, with the people of Iran, and with sick and grieving people the world around. I invite you to join me in a time of meditation and aspiration. This brief opportunity to breathe deeply together. I invite you to settle into wherever you are, to take a few deep breaths, to as much as possible to calm yourself, to close your eyes, to listen to these words from Nancy Wood. Earth, teach me stillness as the grasses are stilled with light. Earth, teach me suffering as old stones suffer with memory. Earth, teach me humility as blossoms are humble with beginning. Earth, teach me caring as the mother who secures her young. Earth, teach me courage as the tree which stands all alone. Earth, teach me limitation as the ant who crawls on the ground. Earth, teach me freedom as the eagle who soars in the sky. Earth, teach me resignation as the leaves which die in the fall. Earth, teach me regeneration as the seed which rises in spring. Earth, teach me to forget myself as the melted snow forgets its life. Earth, teach me to remember kindness. Earth, teach me to remember kindness. Earth, teach me to remember kindness as dry fields weep with rain. Blessed be.
Your community is here for you as we find ways to bring comfort during these uncertain times. Your pledges enable this work to continue. You may also take the time now to make a contribution by clicking on the link found above your video window. As we hold these moments to reflect on our gratitude for our spiritual home, we will now receive the offering. I offer these words as an affirmation of our faith. May the light around us guide our footsteps and hold us fast to the best and most righteous that we seek. May the darkness around us nurture our dreams and give us rest so that we may give ourselves to the work of the world. Let us seek to remember the wholeness of our lives, the weaving of light and shadow in this great and astonishing dance in which we move.
Thank you again for joining us for our live stream service. I regretted to read as our service proceeded that some of you were experiencing challenges accessing our live stream. I'm aware then that some of you, many of you perhaps, will be watching this as a recording from our website in whatever way you are accessing this service. Thank you for being a part of us today. This would not be possible. This would not be possible today without the generous contribution of Paul Knisley. Paul is at a safe distance from us, way more than 6 feet removed in our AV booth today. Paul has been running the camera work that makes this service possible. Paul's done everything he can to bring you the best possible live stream today. Paul, thank you so much for coming in and doing what you've done for us today. And finally, these words to each of you, please take them deeply to heart. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Live in peace and in beauty.